On the hunt for comfortable, timeless Western boots? You already know the best place to shop for quality boots is at your local Tecovas store. So stop by Tecovas Nashville at the Mall at Green Hills or on Broadway by Ryman Auditorium. That's right, you now have 2 locations to choose from. Grab a cold one as you shop and get fitted by a pro. Tecovas Nashville is at your service, and you can find your perfectly fitted dream boots with the help of their expert staff. Everyone will be asking where you got your sick new boots, but I won't be asking because I know they must be Tecovas. That's TECOVAS.com. Don't go gently, y'all.
Today on CityCast Nashville, I am so excited to revisit a conversation Grace Fuse had earlier this year with my friend, local singer, songwriter, and producer, Alex Wong. Alex has been very busy this year, traveling the world, inviting guests to experience his permission parties, which he describes as a multi-sensory concert experience. At these immersive events, he plays a song from his album and pairs it with a Chinese-inspired dish that he cooks himself. I've actually had the honor of attending a couple of times, and this experience, I tell you, is truly unforgettable. Out of all the artists we featured this past year, his story has moved me the most, and I can't wait for you to hear all about it. It's Monday, December 30th. I'm Marie Cecile Anderson, and this is what Nashville's talking about.
Okay, so Alex, where in the world are you right now?
Great question. I am in Penzance, Cornwall, England.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm here for a few weeks producing an artist named Rebecca Promitzer.
Cool.
And then I'm going to go do some shows in Europe.
And we have a special guest on the podcast today, if you want to introduce her.
Oh, yeah. We've got Augie Woggy Wogerton III the first.
Baby on hip. Adorable.
Baby on hip.
Alex, let's start by talking about all the different things you do. You host dinner parties, you have a nonprofit. Can you tell us about the nonprofit first?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the nonprofit called The Quiet Voice, and it comes from a song with the same title. The song was written in a reaction to a lot of, I would say, toxicity that we saw in the years between 2016 and 2020. And I think really what it came down to is how we've succumbed to this definition of power in this culture being all about, you know, who can be the loudest and who can puff up their chest the most, and, you know, domination over collaboration, and who can take up all the space. And, you know, and coming from an experience as a second generation Asian person, you know, growing up in America, there are so many instances where if you are not those characteristics, you're mistaken as someone who has less power. You know, my ultimate goal is to have programs for kids that talk about this stuff. I'm using sort of arts programming that kind of embodies that philosophy.
You also have this project called the Permission Parties. What is that?
The Permission Parties is a listening and tasting experience. So my way back into kind of my memories of my culture and connecting with it is through food. And so it's a 6-course Chinese dinner where each dish is paired with a track from the record.
That's awesome.
That has a emotional connection. And so I tell a story at the beginning of each course, why they're connected, and then we serve the course and then play the song as they eat.
That's awesome.
And so it's kind of like a, I don't know, part dinner party, part like one-man theater show.
Yeah.
And part listening party.
Do you do the cooking, or is there somebody else doing that?
I do.
That's so cool. Okay, so what's your favorite dish track pairing on the menu?
Dang. Well, one of my favorites, I guess, is the dish that's paired with the song "Permission," which is the first song, actually. So the menu is also a vegan menu. My grandfather was a cook in Chinatown for like 40 years. My aunts and uncles and my dad grew up in the restaurant, and that's where I learned a lot of cooking. So it's a fried Brussels sprout that uses a recipe that my grandfather made up for fried chicken wings. It was a special batter, and it became kind of like locally famous in Chinatown. And what I liked about it, and the reason I used it, was because I saw that as, at the time, him coming in the 40s and, working up from being a dishwasher, learning, like getting to a place where he was able to like have a creative expression in an environment that was like completely hostile to that. And everything around him was telling him to get smaller and take up less space. For him to be able to find a way to like create something, his art, and like have people feel it and respond to it, and then have me 2 generations later still be able to like taste the recipe and respond to it. To me, I felt like that was an act of rebellion. I saw it as an act of rebellion. And so it just paired with the song Permission. The refrain of the song is just, you have permission. And it kind of challenges the idea that we have to wait for someone to give it to us. I like that pairing.
So it seems like cooking and your heritage and your music are all connected. Yeah,
I think it's all related. I mean, I think for me, songwriting has always been at its best. For me, it's always sort of mirroring the things that I'm processing and going through in life and in my own journey as a human. So, this album that's coming out is called Permission. And it's also has the song The Quiet Voice on it. And it's sort of a concept album about my experience learning how to take up space as a minority in America. And so I think all these things have been related to me, like learning how to take up my own space, learning how to give myself permission to do so, learning how to show up, like show myself. I think that there's a lot of internalized racism that children of immigrants go through in the quest to assimilate, in the quest to belong. And so a lot of times the first reaction, and I wouldn't speak for everyone, but for me, it was to push away my culture, my Chineseness, and to kind of like just basically try to become white, to be accepted and to survive. And this has been a long journey back to how do you integrate all of those parts of your identity in a way and get rid of all the stuff that we carry along with us as we grow up.
So I'm here with songwriter and producer Alex Wong. When did you start playing music?
Gosh, I started playing music when I was probably 5 or so. I started on piano, like a good Asian boy, and then I was obsessed with drums the whole time.
Well, piano's percussion, man.
It totally, yeah. Although I wanted the pots and pans in the kitchen, so I remember like having to negotiate when I was about 7 or 8 with my parents to let me take drum lessons. And so the deal was they would get me 1 drum and I had to keep taking piano lessons. So I took it. I took the deal. It was a snare drum and I played that for 3 years and then they got me another drum.
You can do a lot with a snare drum. I mean, that's
true.
It's all in the basics, the loosey goosey of the snare drum. I'm saying this in that I took 1 drum lesson once in college. So I don't actually know.
I mean, that's more than most working drummers. So you're doing good.
I mean, so true. I'm ready for Broadway. Who are some of your early musical influences?
I actually I grew up kind of on classical music, so because I was playing in this like youth symphony, and it was just like the first music that like really made me cry and like really like hit me in a emotional level. And then like in high school, I think I was listening to classical music and then like really bad pop music, just like whatever.
Yeah, define
the
that.
lowest common denominator, whatever would make me cool. I would listen to. And I don't think I really discovered like my own taste until college. I think I started playing my first rock band in college, and I was sort of like retroactively discovering cool music, and they did not study anything, and they were kind of like all self-taught musicians, and they were really into all these like UK bands. So it was like Happy Mondays and The Cure and The Smiths and all these sort of like 80s and 90s Britpop bands. And that was kind of like my first like world musically and culturally. Like that's what that band played, and that's what they were all about. And so I kind of like discovered that music through them.
Yeah. So when did you start writing your own songs?
I think a couple years after that band ended, I was like directionless in LA. Like I felt like too far away from going back to school for classical, and I just kind of didn't know what was going to be next. And I met somebody who became sort of like a mentor, and he was like a producer composer. And so he kind of showed me this whole world of the studio and kind of creating my own music. I'm getting judged right now.
Yeah, Augie was giving me some stank face when we hopped on here. So if you hear anything from Augie, it's just judgment about my hosting skills. With your production and when you first got into that, do you have any like go-to moves for production nowadays? Anywhere that you start every time you start a new song?
Yeah, I do. My go-to move is to have like, this is going to sound really pretentious and
no, please.
Woo-woo, but I would say that now my preferred go-to move is to have like absolutely no move, to have the least idea, least preconceived idea. And I always start with artists. I have like my studio is filled with all the walls are chalkboard paint. Mm-hmm. And so my first thing that we do is we're just talking a lot about intentions. I'm just trying to like start to understand the world. And so we start to collect words. I ask them to just think of like any word that feels like something that's related to this intention of this record. I don't know, evening or furry or like moss or metal or whatever. And so we just start writing a bunch of stuff that seems kind of unrelated on the board.
Yeah.
And then sooner or later you start to see like patterns appear and sort of groups of things. And you start to see, oh, that's like, there is like an aesthetic that is being described. The whole palette of the record comes from those words. Like, I don't like to start with any, oh, here's my cool, like synth move, or here's my, go-to drum sound.
How does it compare being in Nashville and playing and having your career here compared to New York or LA?
I think not comparable. Each city was a great place if you're in that city at the right phase of your journey. I never really resonated with LA because I think I didn't know myself well enough at that time to utilize it well enough. Like I was like so in this discovery phase where it didn't make sense in the way that I guess it could have. And then when I went to New York, it like made a ton of sense because what I needed was like just to drink from the fire hose and get my ass kicked and like intake all of this information and like influence and inspiration and all that. So, and I feel like if I had gone to Nashville, and this is probably totally different for someone else, but for me, Nashville felt better once I was a little more, I don't know, where I was established a little more with what I wanted to do musically. I could imagine it being a hard place to find your voice, for example. Although I know people do it all the time. There's just so many musicians who are doing amazing work and similar work, so similar to you. Like, I remember coming to Nashville and meeting all these producers who like had a similar skill set and a similar aesthetic and a similar like, it's like if we're here competing for these same records, this is going to suck. It's going to be a total
Yeah.
shit show. And there's always somebody who's way better at everything
Yes.
than me.
Yeah.
And I wasn't gonna win at all. Like I wasn't, for people to want to work with me, they're not going to be like, oh, he's the best X, Y, and Z. It's going to be because he has this point of view that is his, that no one else has.
Yeah.
And so that's what I guess Nashville forced me to lean into that and to like really zoom into like, well, what is my point of view? What is it that I'm offering as a musician, and as a songwriter? And so.
Yeah. I think that phrase, I wasn't going to win, is like so relevant to so many artists in Nashville. It does come down to finding your style and your sound and finding the right people for that. In terms of finding your style and that kind of stuff, you talked about bad pop music. What is good pop music in your mind?
Cooking shows. I mean, I listen as much as I can, and like I have like my all-time all-stars. Like I guess the short list of people would be like Leonard Cohen, Bob Dylan, and Tom Petty. I could kind of go on. Well, Radiohead's up there. I'm always going to be a Smashing Pumpkins stan. But I think that as far as like what really inspires me, it's usually creatives in different fields. And I mean, I'm only half joking about cooking shows. Like I'm probably like watching and listening to like interviews with chefs and watching cooking shows a lot more than listening to music. But just like because I really get inspired by like someone's creative process. That's so useful to me in terms of like translating that into my music making process.
Alex, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much.
That's all for today here on CityCast Nashville. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Nashville newsletter. We'll be back after the new year with more news from around the city. Toodles!